I learned the language of silence the day they told me I was dying. The room smelled of antiseptic and rain. Outside, the city was still half asleep, the streets silvered by drizzle. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed like tired bees, filling the space between my heartbeats. The doctor's lips moved, but all I heard were fragments: tumor, malignant, glioblastoma, survival rate. Words that didn't fit inside the world I knew. When I finally understood, I didn't cry. I just sat there, watching a droplet slide down the window pane. It reached the bottom and disappeared, leaving no trace. I thought, that's going to be me. Lena's face came to my mind before anything else. Her laugh, the way she said my name when she was half asleep, the tiny freckle below her left eye. We'd been broke since college, two dreamers, scraping by on caffeine and hope. She painted in a cafe basement for extra cash. I fixed broken computers for neighbors. On Friday nights, we'd sit on the fire escape, drink cheap wine, and plan our impossible future. A small studio, a dog, maybe pet. We had nothing, yet somehow everything. So how do you tell the person who makes poverty beautiful that you're leaving, not because you stopped loving them, but because you don't want them to watch you die? You don't. You pack quietly, like guilt with hands. You fold shirts that still smell like her shampoo. You leave the apartment key under the chipped mug she bought for 50 cents at a thrift shop. You write a note that says I'm sorry but never explains for what. You walk into the rain before she wakes up. That night I sat alone in a hospital corridor. The lights flickered. The vending machine groaned. I tried to picture her waking up to find me gone, the disbelief first, then anger, then maybe tears. I told myself it was mercy, that if I disappeared, she could start over. I convinced myself I was saving her. But love, I would learn later, doesn't disappear with distance. It waits patient and cruel in the pages we never read. The hospital became a world of its own, a quiet universe where time bent and days dissolved into sterile light. In the mornings, nurses wheeled in carts of medicine that smelled faintly of metal and mint. By noon, the corridors echoed with soft footsteps and the distant buzz of intercom calls. By night, everything turned blue, the color of waiting. I tried to convince myself that leaving Lena had been the right thing. Some days I almost believed it. When the pain was bad, I'd press my palms against my skull as if I could hold the tumor still. Other days I'd stare at the ceiling tiles and count how many I could see before the morphine blurred them into clouds. I started keeping a notebook, not a diary, just pages filled with what I couldn't say aloud. I wrote, she'd be fine. She has always been stronger than me. Maybe when she forgets my name, she'll finally be free. But I lied to myself with every word. At night, I'd unlock my phone just to scroll through her old messages. The last one she sent was simple: buy milk tomorrow. It was so ordinary, so painfully alive. I read it until the screen dimmed. Weeks became months. My hair thinned. My reflection turned ghost-like. Sometimes I thought I saw her in the crowd. A flash of auburn hair, a coat she used to wear. But when I blinked, it was gone. One afternoon, during chemo, a volunteer handed me a letter. It was from an old college friend, someone who still followed Lena's art page. He wrote she got her first exhibition. Her paintings are everywhere now. You'd be proud." I didn't reply. I just stared at the paper, my chest tightening with something that wasn't just pain. That night, I tore out a fresh page from my notebook and began the first of many letters I would never send. "Dear Lena, if I ever see you again, I hope you've forgotten how I left. I hope your laughter doesn't sound like mine anymore. But if it does, I hope it still finds sunlight." I folded the paper, pressed it against my chest, and whispered to no one, "You were my reason to live, and now my reason to stay away." Lena learned that grief doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps slow, invisible, into the smallest corners of your life, like rain under a locked door. The first week after Ethan disappeared, she searched every possible reason. Maybe he'd gone to find work. Maybe he'd been hurt. Maybe he'd changed his mind about their future. Every maybe kept her awake until dawn. His clothes were gone, but the air still smelled like him. Detergent, coffee, and that faint hospital scent he never mentioned. She sat on the edge of the bed for hours, waiting for the sound of his keys in the lock. When it never came, she stopped waiting, but she didn't stop hoping. Months passed. Bills piled up, rent notices turned red. She took 3 jobs: cafe, art supply shop, night shift at a gallery, anything that kept her from thinking. She painted less for passion, more for survival. But pain, when given a brush, becomes truth. Her art began to change. Deeper shadows, trembling hands, women who smiled with eyes full of storms. A critic once called her work the art of missing someone without saying their name. He was right. It was around that time she bought a leather-bound notebook. Not to write about him, that's what she told herself, but to write through him. At first, it was just lists, groceries, deadlines, random thoughts. Then came fragments. Then came him. "You used to say rain made the city softer. Today it only made me smaller. I hate you for leaving. I love you still. Is that allowed?" The notebook became her confession booth. Every night she wrote to a man who'd never read her words. And somehow, that made her stronger. Years went by. Her work gained attention. Magazines called her a rising star of modern realism. She moved into a glass-walled studio, sunlight spilling over half-finished canvases. But even surrounded by success, she sometimes woke at 3 a.m. reaching for a phantom warmth beside her. In the quiet that followed, she'd whisper into the dark, "Where did you go, Ethan? And why does loving you still feel like breathing underwater?" I used to think time could fix what love broke. It doesn't. It only teaches you how to live with the fracture. 5 years had passed since I walked away from Lena. I had moved to another city, smaller, quieter, nameless. The kind of place where no one asks why you look tired all the time. The treatments had stopped working 2 years ago, yet somehow I was still alive. Alive, but not really living. One rented a small apartment above a bookstore. The owner, an old man named Harris, paid me to manage inventory. I liked the quiet rhythm, the sound of turning pages, the scent of ink and dust. It was a kind of silence that didn't hurt. One rainy evening, while stacking a new shipment of art magazines, I saw it. Her name, Lena Hart. The cover showed her standing in front of a large canvas, her hair longer now, eyes steadier but unmistakably hers. The headline read, "Lena Hart, the woman who painted her own healing. My hands trembled. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. I sat behind the counter, staring at the photo until the letters blurred. She looked whole. Not the girl who cried in a small apartment 5 years ago, but a woman who had built a fortress from her pain. And I, the one who had left her, was still trapped in the ruins. The article said she was hosting a charity exhibition downtown. I told myself I wouldn't go, but that night I dreamt of her voice saying my name, not softly, not lovingly, but as if calling me back from a place I wasn't supposed to be. When I woke up, I was already dressed. The city lights bled through the fog, and for the first time in years I felt something other than emptiness. I didn't know what I was looking for. Forgiveness, maybe, or proof that she had truly forgotten me. I stepped into the rain, whispering her name like a prayer I no longer deserved to say. The gallery smelled of varnish and expensive silence. Soft jazz hummed somewhere in the distance, blending with the shuffle of heels against marble. People drifted between paintings, murmuring admiration, sipping wine they didn't like. And there she was. Lena stood beneath a wash of golden light, her hair gathered loosely, a black silk dress brushing the floor. She looked nothing like the girl I left, yet everything about her still felt familiar. The way her fingers fidgeted when she was nervous. The way her eyes softened when someone spoke to her gently. The way her laughter, though rare now, still carried that same fragile warmth. I wanted to turn around, to vanish back into the rain outside. But her gaze found me before I could move. For a heartbeat, the room disappeared. The music, the chatter, the lights, all of it drowned in that single recognition. She froze, glass in hand. Then, slowly, she walked toward me. Her heels clicked like seconds falling from a clock. Ethan? My name left her lips like a memory that didn't know if it was welcome. I smiled weakly. "Hey, Lena?" Silence stretched between us, heavy with the ghosts of all we never said. "You look," she began, then stopped, studying me as if comparing me to the man she remembered. "Tired," I finished for her. "Yeah, it's been a long few years." Her eyes shimmered. "I thought you were gone," I forced a laugh. "Not yet." We talked about safe things, her art, the exhibition, the weather. But beneath every word was the same unspoken truth. I had left and she had survived me. She showed me one of her new paintings. A woman standing in a flooded room, holding a letter above the waterline. The colors were soft, but the eyes were mine. "She's beautiful," I said. "She's broken," Lena corrected quietly. "But she learned how to float." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. When the crowd thinned, she touched my arm lightly. "Will you stay a bit longer? I'd like to talk." I nodded, though my chest was already aching with all the things I could never tell her. Later that night, while helping her pack the remaining canvases, I noticed a small leather notebook peeking from her bag. Worn edges, ribbon marker, initials pressed faintly on the cover, LH. She caught me looking and smiled faintly. "My diary," she said. "Old habit." I didn't ask to read it, but the way she said habit felt like a door she didn't know she had left open. It happened by accident, or at least that's what I told myself. 2 nights after the exhibition, Lena invited me to help move her paintings to her studio. It was late when we finished. She made tea the same way she used to, too much sugar, not enough patience. The air between us felt fragile, like a bridge rebuilt over old wreckage. When she went to take a call in the other room, I saw the leather notebook again, her diary, lying half open on the table. Pages curled at the edges, ink faintly smudged by fingerprints. It looked loved, touched, needed. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe curiosity. Maybe guilt disguised as longing. Maybe I just wanted to know if I still existed somewhere inside her world. I told myself I'd read only a line, but pain doesn't work that way. Pain invites you to stay. The first page I saw was dated 3 years ago, March 12th. Today I dreamed of him again. He was standing in the kitchen, laughing about the burnt toast. I woke up crying. I don't know what hurts more, that he's gone, or that my mind still keeps him alive. My hands trembled. I turned another page. June 2. I told myself I'd stop writing about Ethan. That lasted a week. Maybe I'm addicted to missing him. Maybe this is how I keep him real, by bleeding him out through ink. Page after page, anger, tenderness, exhaustion, hope. And in between, that quiet desperation only people who've truly loved can understand. He left without goodbye, but somehow I'm still the one who apologizes in my head. Maybe love isn't about staying. Maybe it's about surviving the absence. I stopped breathing. There was one entry dated last year. If I see him again, I'll ask just one question. Did he ever think of me when he was gone? And if he lies, I'll forgive him anyway. I closed the book with shaking hands. The sound of the cover snapping shut felt like punishment. From the hallway, I heard her voice, soft, distracted, still so achingly familiar. Ethan, you okay? I hid the notebook back where it had been. Yeah, I said, forcing my voice steady. Just tired. She walked back in, smiling. Some things never change, she said. You still overthink everything. If only she knew. If only she knew that in a few stolen minutes, I had walked through every version of her grief and realized that leaving her wasn't mercy. It was cruelty dressed as love. That night, when I returned home, I couldn't sleep. I opened my own notebook and wrote a single sentence. She kept me alive through words I never deserved to read. I kept seeing her after that night. Coffee on rainy afternoons. Walks through the art district. Conversations that circled carefully around the past, like two people avoiding a broken glass on the floor. She laughed more now, though sometimes too quickly, like someone trying to remember how. And I found myself pretending to be whole, pretending to be the man I once was. Maybe I was trying to protect her. Maybe I was just too afraid to ruin what little we had left. When she spoke about her work, her eyes lit up. When she mentioned loneliness, her voice softened. Sometimes she'd glance at me, as if searching for the version of me that used to believe in forever. I almost told her the truth 100 times. About the hospital, the diagnosis, the pills I still took every morning. But then she'd smile, and I'd swallow the confession back down. Because the truth wouldn't save her. It would only pull her back into the dark I'd tried to leave her out of. One evening, we sat by the river. The city lights shimmered across the water, slicing the night into trembling gold. She said, Do you ever think about what we could have been? Every day, I said. She smiled, small, tired. Then maybe we still are somewhere. That silence that followed was almost kind. We didn't reach for each other. We didn't need to. There was love and restraint, too. Later, she told me about a man she'd been seeing, briefly. Nothing serious, she said. She watched my face as she spoke, maybe expecting jealousy or relief. But I only nodded. I'm glad you tried. And I meant it, because she deserved a life unshackled from mine. But lies are heavy things. They rot quietly from the inside out. And when they break, they take everything with them. The break came sooner than I expected. A week later, I collapsed at the bookstore. The headaches I'd hidden for months bloomed into fire. When I woke in the hospital, there was only white light and the soft beep of machines. And her voice. Why didn't you tell me? I opened my eyes. She was standing there, trembling, eyes red, clutching a crumpled medical file. Lena. She cut me off, voice cracking. All this time you were dying, and you let me believe. I didn't want to hurt you. You did, she whispered. You hurt me by leaving, and you're hurting me again by staying silent. I tried to speak, but the words tangled somewhere between apology and breath. She pressed her hand to her mouth, shaking her head. I thought we'd run out of things to lose, she said softly. But somehow we keep finding new ways. Then she left, quietly like before. Only this time it wasn't me walking away. The doctor didn't say it outright, but I could read it in his eyes. 3 months, maybe less. I'd grown used to that kind of silence, the kind that carries more truth than words ever could. When Lena left the hospital that night, I thought I'd never see her again. Part of me hoped I wouldn't. She deserved distance from this, from me, from the slow erosion of everything she once loved. But she came back. Not the next day or the one after, but eventually. She walked into my room one afternoon carrying a bouquet of wildflowers. Clumsy, uneven, exactly the kind she used to steal from roadside gardens. She placed them in a chipped glass by my bed. Still terrible at picking flowers, I said. Still terrible at staying alive, she replied, her voice trembling just enough to sound like laughter. We didn't talk about forgiveness. We just sat there, breathing in the same quiet. Days folded into weeks. Some days she'd read while I slept. Other days she'd paint small sketches of the view outside my window, gray skies, crooked rooftops, a single bird that never flew far. And sometimes when she thought I was asleep, she'd cry without sound. I wrote again, small notes, fragments of thought. Sentences I didn't have the strength to say aloud. I filled my old notebook with them. Not for me, for her. When you look at the stars, don't think of me dying. Think of me resting there, quiet, where no pain can reach. You once said art is made of what hurts us. Then make me your masterpiece. One evening, the nurse left a stack of discharge papers by mistake. I stared at the blank signature line, the space where permission meets surrender. I didn't sign it. Instead, I turned the page and wrote in the corner, I'm sorry for leaving twice. Lena arrived later, hair damp from rain. She sat beside me, opened her diary, and read something under her breath. I couldn't hear the words, but her voice shook like the world was unraveling through her. Do you regret it? She asked suddenly. Leaving you? She nodded. "Every day," I said. "But if I'd stayed, you would have watched me die. I didn't want that to be your last picture of me." Her hand found mine, fragile, steady, warm. "I found you anyway," she whispered, "even when you tried to disappear." The room felt smaller then, or maybe it was my heartbeat fading into the hum of machines. I closed my eyes and said, almost to myself, "Maybe love isn't about forever. Maybe it's about who stays even when they know the ending." I woke up to the sound of her voice. At first I thought it was a dream, that gentle rhythm of words that used to drift through our old apartment when she read her favorite novels aloud while I fixed the leaky window. But this time the words were her own. She was sitting beside my bed holding a notebook. My notebook. Her eyes were swollen, her voice trembling but steady enough to carry each line. "When you look at the stars, don't think of me dying. Think of me resting there, quiet, where no pain can reach. You once said art is made of what hurts us. Then make me your masterpiece." She paused, breath hitching. "I didn't know you were writing this for me," she whispered. I wanted to tell her it was always for her, every word, every silence, every breath I had left. But the machines beside me spoke louder than I could. Their rhythm was slower now, softer, almost kind. She turned another page, reading my last entry. "If love is a book, ours ends before the final chapter. But maybe that's what makes it beautiful, the pages we never read, the words we never got to say. I loved you quietly, but endlessly." Her tears fell on the paper, blurring the ink into shapes that looked like constellations. For a moment I wondered if that was what heaven looked like, the places where her tears touched my words. She leaned closer, her voice barely above a breath. "Ethan, please stay." I smiled, or maybe I just thought I did. The room felt lighter, or maybe I was. I tried to speak, but all that came out was air, shaped like her name. "Lena." She gripped my hand tightly, as if her strength could anchor me, and for a moment it almost did. I heard her whisper again, "I forgive you, for everything." And then, as the beeping slowed into silence, I whispered what I'd written months ago, barely audible, but true. "I always read your pages, Lena." A year after Ethan's death, the world began to sound different. The city still woke with sirens and bus brakes. The rain still whispered against the windows, but somewhere between those noises there was space, a hollow place where his voice. At first, it hurt to breathe in that silence. Then, slowly, I learned how to live inside it. His notebook sat on my desk, worn and soft from too much touching. Some nights I'd run my fingers along the ink he left behind, tracing each word like a map leading back to a place that no longer existed. I stopped writing for a while. Every sentence felt too small for the kind of grief he left me with. But grief, like love, insists on being seen. So one day I opened my diary again. "Dear Ethan, you once said love isn't forever. It's who stays, even knowing the ending. I stayed, Ethan. I stayed until your last breath. And I'll stay here, living, so that you won't just be a story that stopped." That entry became the first page of my new book, The Pages We Never Read. I filled it with the words we never spoke, the fragments of both our hearts. It wasn't written to mourn him. It was written to keep him alive in a way the body never could. When the book was published, People called it tragic, but to me it wasn't tragedy. It was proof that silence too can speak. Sometimes during interviews they ask if Ethan was real. I always smile. He was, I say. He still is, just not in a way you can touch. Every year, on the anniversary of his death, I visit the meadow outside the hospital, the one he could see from his window. The grass grows wild there, and the wind moves like breath through it. I sit down, open his notebook, and read aloud. When you look at the stars, don't think of me dying. Think of me resting there, quiet, where no pain can reach. Then I look up, and the stars are always there, quiet, endless, unblinking. I think maybe he's right. Maybe love doesn't end. It just changes the way it speaks. And in that silence I still hear him, reading the pages we never read.